and welcome to Knights of Columbus Discuss. My name is Paul Morano, and my guest today is Mr. Ron DeStasio. Ron, welcome.
Thank you, Paul. Great to be here.
Now, I understand, Ron, you are the New Hampshire Knights of Columbus pro-life chairman?
Yes, I am, sir. Yes.
And did they change the name recently?
Recently, last year, they changed it to the Culture of Life Director.
Okay. Here's my first question to you. Why do you do this work?
There is a story behind this. Actually, my wife tells the story a lot better than I do. But I am obviously a transplant from New York, if you listen to how I speak.
I like it.
But,
what part of New York?
I grew up in Long Island.
Okay.
Yeah. And about 30 years ago, all I can say is my faith isn't what it is today.
Okay.
I mean, my wife and I would go to Mass, you know, our daughter was going to CCD, but the depth that it is now and the strength that it is now, it just wasn't there back then.
Okay.
And we weren't exactly having an easy time with finances, and we were looking for a job someplace else, a transfer out of New York. And my wife's brother moved up to Nashua many years ago. She was thinking of this area. And 2 or 3 years I put in for transfers, nothing would happen. And somewhere along the line, I don't know whether it was part of my wife's work with CCD at the parish, but there was a woman who went around promoting, and I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it's called the Pilgrim Virgin Home Visitation Program.
I have.
Yeah, it was started by the Legion of Mary years ago. And she started bringing the statue of Our Lady of Fatima to the house to pray the rosary with these other women. And when it was first started, I was like, I don't know.
Right.
Little by little, you know, I got into it. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, I was working one day, and my boss gets a phone call. He says, "Did you put in for a job in New England?" He says, "Well, it looks like you're moving to New England."
Really?
So, you know, my wife and I put a lot of stock in the prayers, probably most of the prayers that she had, to get me up to New England. And then coming up here, I'm an only child, didn't have a lot of contacts up here. And at the time, I was at Resurrection Parish in Nashua.
Nashua, very familiar with it.
Yeah, and I was an usher. And my wife says, "You got to find something to do, Ron, you know?" All right. One of the gentlemen came in and said, "Hey, you want to join the Knights of Columbus?" Like for 3-4 weeks in a row.
Okay.
All of a sudden, I relented. That was back in September of 92.
At this point, you were attending Mass on
Well,
Sundays?
yes, definitely
Okay.
attending Mass.
All right.
But my faith wasn't as deep as it was.
Right.
It just wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't really listening to the Word of God when I went to Mass. I went because I knew I'd have to go.
So you joined the Knights.
And the fact of just joining the Knights, and this is how I see it, getting involved with the good works, working with priests, looking at the sacrifices that the priests go through daily to serve their parishes, had an impression upon me. And little by little, I started listening to different themes about the culture of life, or different activities, I should say, that were going on with the. At the time, I didn't even call it. They didn't even call it the culture of life. It was just different pro-life activities or anti-abortion activities, and.
But at this point in your faith walk, did you have a sense that abortion was wrong, that it was
yes.
the killing of an innocent?
Yes.
Okay, you
Yes.
understood that.
I understood that,
Okay.
but at the first, I remember I was probably under the old liberal, you know, guise of like, well, you know, it's wrong, but I can't tell anybody that it's wrong.
Right. Personally opposed, but.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And it took a while of doing my own research, my own studying, my own listening, going to the different marches, going to the different events, just preparing myself, you know, to learn more about, you know, what was going on, and to listen carefully, you know, because if you listen to anybody else, to them it's not an issue, you know, it's never an issue. So it took a lot of time for me to, and I was doing other things. I was a district deputy at one time, and I was looking at what was going on with the state, with the culture of life, and I said, you know, and I'm not bragging, but I said, you know, I think I could maybe do a better job. And after 3 years as a district deputy, I asked the state deputy, because the current director, it was Stan Poland at the time, he was moving away. I says, I think I can do this job. I'd like to take a crack at it.
And just in a nutshell, what does the job entail?
Well, it's sort of like a coordinator, I would say, or even almost like a rah-rah man or something like that, or,
A leader?
a leader to get the word out on certain issues. And I think I gave that to you previously when we looked at it, but I always start out when I'm talking about what to do, what councils need to do. I tell them to take the four main avenues, and I always say it's prayer, it's education, it's outreach, and then it's called legislative action.
So those four elements, you would say, are the framework to fight what you would call the culture of death.
Right, exactly.
Can we maybe go over each one of them
Okay,
separately?
all right, yes.
All right, so because this is important for those who feel that they should have a part in this church militant fight against the culture of death. Prayer.
Okay, I think prayer I always put first because it's the most important.
Why?
Because we cannot do anything without God.
Okay.
God gives us all. And I'll get to that later on, but I mean, I know we had the gift of His Son, but the first gift was the gift of life, and that's why it needs to be revered. So without God, we're not here. So I stress prayer in two ways. I stress for them to pray for the unborn. I stress them to pray for people who don't understand
Yeah.
about the negativity of the culture of death. I stress them to pray for to people who work in abortion clinics,
Right.
because we
Right.
do go up and pray in front of the Planned Parenthood sometimes. So one sense of prayer is directed outwardly, to fellow Catholics or people involved in the abortion industry. The other avenue of prayer is directed inwardly, to steel oneself, to strengthen oneself, to be able to answer the questions when someone asks you something about embryonic cell research or about end-of-life issues or about late-term abortions, that at least you have some type of knowledge to be able to give them the truth that's out there.
So with prayer, it strengthens the internal, and it
Right.
is for also the enlightenment of the external.
Right, right.
What would you say to people watching right now who would say that those who are consider themselves pro-choice are compassionate and they care about the women that are involved that have unexpected pregnancies? What would be your message to them?
Well, my message to them would be, yes, there is concern for a woman in crisis, but that's not the only person that is there.
That's involved in this.
Right.
Yeah.
Once conception takes place, there is another life. And there's no concern for that life if your only concern is for what choice the woman is going to make.
And you would probably even say there's no concern for the woman if you are supporting a decision for her to kill her child.
That's true. That's true, because the repercussions from abortion, and this is coming out more and more, and I think it was hidden for years, but you see down in Washington, D.C. during the March for Life, the women with Silent No More.
Yes.
I mean, these procedures took place 25 or 30 years ago.
They deeply regret their
And they're
abortions.
still having. I went to a dinner for one of the pregnancy centers. In fact, it was the one for Keene last year. And there's women that give their testimonies about, and these women are now in their mid to late 40s.
Yeah.
And they aborted their child. And some of them
Decades ago.
have named the child. Some of them, the anniversary, go to a cemetery to pray for the child.
It's their way of healing.
Of healing,
And
yes.
bringing
And that healing is necessary. But if you look at what the mass media talks about, abortion is like brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
I mean, an underage girl can go in for Plan B contraception, go in for some type of procedure, but if someone has to go on a trip in school or cuts their hand or needs medicine, you need a permission slip.
It's amazing.
It's all upside down today.
Total.
It's all upside down.
It's interesting. You mentioned the Silent No More movements, which Father Frank Pavone leads. There used to be a syndrome called post-abortion syndrome. Are you familiar with that?
A little bit, not a ton.
Yeah. Basically, its major tenet was that women who get abortions very often suppress it because they don't want to face the truth of which they did. And so in that suppression, a lot of negativity comes out in other facets of their personality, whether it be anxiety or depression or what have you. And the ones that actually go through the mourning process and go through the process of seeking forgiveness from
That's
God,
the key, forgiveness, yeah.
from God and from their preborn child, those are the ones that are much better off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Now, this whole thing, of course, is begun on a premise that preborn human beings begin their existence and their life at conception. There is no discrepancy, is there, between what the Catholic Church teaches and what science is clear about?
Science and religion should not be mutually exclusive. They
It
need to work hand in hand.
It makes no sense if
If
they
you
were to
even
be.
forget about one's faith, just take a look at it from a biological point of view.
Yeah.
The life is there. I mean, it's not a full-formed baby yet, but if you take a look, and I think Priests for Life have done a good job with that, with fetal development photos that they put on their website. If you take a look at the child at 8 weeks and 12 weeks, you can see.
Yeah.
You can see when the spine starts to form. You can see when the eyes start to form. There's no doubt that that is a human being.
What's interesting is that you say that there is no fully formed baby.
Well, the baby's not born yet. That's all, yeah.
But I would even say, following reason, that a human being is not fully formed until they're around 25 years old after birth.
Well,
So, I mean, from conception to one's prime to one's old age, it's all one continuum of life.
That's right.
If you look at it purely from a scientific point of view, we begin our lives at conception, we end them at natural death, and the only thing in between is natural growth and nutrition.
that's right. That's right.
So the pro-life position is one of scientific accuracy.
I would say so, definitely, definitely. And the more people, that's why the pregnancy centers that have the ultrasounds are very successful in getting women to choose life. Because I happen to know for CareNet in Nashua and in Manchester,
Right.
At least 90 to 95% of the women that view an ultrasound choose to have their baby.
Yes.
And then
I
the
heard of
services
those
are there to get them through the pregnancy and afterwards.
It's so important sometimes for women to see who is actually within them before they make their decision, which they can't go back on.
Well, it's funny because a few of the directors of the pregnancy care centers that I spoke to, he says the men now, they're probably obviously, these are people living hard scrabble lives, not educated. All of a sudden he'd go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Is that what I did?
Yeah.
That's mine?
Yeah.
You ain't killing that. Forget it, So
It's kind of funny, but it's good that if that prompts the reality, the truth behind what's growing inside.
Yeah. But the problem is for too long, and I think it starts back, and I took a look at some of the notes you had there, and I'd given a talk a while ago about what went wrong, and I made up a term. I called it the Helen Gurley Brown effect. If you remember Helen Gurley Brown in Sex and the Single
I do,
Girl.
yes. Cosmopolitan magazine.
Right.
Yes.
And that led to sex anytime. You're a free woman.
Yeah, the sexual revolution.
Sexual revolution,
Yeah.
which in turn fostered more contraception.
Yeah.
And then when that happened, the whole idea of marital love
Yeah.
for the purposes of children, or even if you take a look at it really like we go back to science, just for the continuation of the species,
Yep.
was out the window. You didn't need to have that.
No, it's all been disintegrated. The notion of marriage, of sexual relations, and of love,
And then that,
and of children.
unfortunately, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that unfortunately led to the prevalence today of same-sex marriages.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because children are not the most desired thing. They're just maybe a byproduct.
Let me summarize what you're saying right now, because I think this is ultimately important in this culture of life battle, what you're saying right now.
All right.
Because if you want to try to fix something, you need to understand the cause. The sexual revolution that began in the 60s and flowered in the 1970s inevitably evolved into our culture of death.
Exactly.
And it seems like what you're saying, and I fully agree with this, that, and I'll even add something to it, the invention and the popularization of the birth control pill that occurred in the 1960s, and again became popular in the early 70s, this mentality of separating life from love, of separating sex from baby making,
Right.
this mentality began to permeate and permeate. And hence, sex no longer became intrinsically linked to baby making or procreation. It now, because of that mentality of separation, can be used in any perverted way a person wants to for the sake of pleasure. It no longer has a natural end to it. And when you get rid of the natural end of procreation, you almost inevitably get rid of the natural end of permanent union.
Right.
Because in marriage, you had both of those ends tied as one. Sex was an expression of a permanent bond, and which would sometimes, if nature allows, procreate children. That has all been disintegrated, and you can almost narrow it down to where it began, the invention and the popularization of the birth control pill.
Pill. Yeah. Yeah.
So that created a premarital sex culture, which inevitably, because of supply and demand, created an abortion culture.
Exactly. Exactly. And what it does is that everything is done for a selfish reason.
Yeah.
You know, no one is looking at the catechism. A lot of Catholics aren't even doing it now, but, you know, the catechism of the Catholic Church, that unitive love for procreation, of giving of oneself to another.
Totally, yes.
But what the sexual revolution did, it's, okay, maybe it's pleasure for your partner, but not really. It's pleasure for me.
Yeah.
Pleasure for me.
And
it's
so
it's
you're
all
not-
built on selfishness.
You're not giving your full self to the other.
Right.
Because you want to reserve yourself for yourself and future pleasurable experiences. So that notion of marriage, that I give a total self-donation to you and you to me exclusively and permanently, which really is the bedrock foundation of civilization.
The family.
The family.
It's destroyed the family completely.
It has broken down ever since.
I mean, if you look at certain statistics, especially in New York, especially among African American families, I mean, they say about 40% of the births of African American children, not even births, 40% of the pregnancies, I should say, end up in abortion.
Yeah.
And the key is, and this is, my wife firmly believes in this, she always hounds me to talk about fatherhood. Where are the fathers?
Yeah.
There's no one there to guide them. There's no one there to give discipline or to educate. It's women doing their best, struggling in a household.
When sex, marriage, and procreation are divided, they're no longer seen as linked, all of this hell breaks loose.
Right. Exactly.
Well, you know what? We only got to the first of your 4 pillars.
Okay,
Prayer.
that's okay.
So prayer is important. By the way, that was a very important tangent, I think.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
The second one you have is education. How do we educate? How do we get the truth out from a media that is doing everything it can to block the truth?
Yeah, well,
Or at least a mainstream media, that is. We're doing media right now.
And that's what I tried to do as the chairman, and that's what I encourage the councils to do. We'll have pro-life chairman of their own or through their grand nights, is to make your members aware of the wealth of information that is out there, whether it's through websites like Priests for Life or National Right to Life or American Life League or Susan B. Anthony list. That was part of my job. I started out like that, is just making people look. Here is the information. If you don't understand if you don't understand something fully, then take a look at it.
Most people who are pro-choice have no informed choice whatsoever as to what they're doing. They don't know.
Look at one thing.
Yeah.
It's my right, and unfortunately, the Supreme Court, obviously there's a higher law, but the Supreme Court said it's their right, and they're going to invoke that right all the time. But there's a wealth of information out there about fetal development, about what goes on in embryonic stem cell research. And they don't understand that you're creating life to destroy life, you know?
Yeah.
And then end of life issues.
So education is important.
That's, yeah,
Educate yourself through the web.
through the web.
You can take classes. I mean, some
Right.
colleges have good bioethics classes if that's your bent. You could, if your bent is to get up here and do a cable television show or something, or write an article to your newspaper, educate people. Very important stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and even some of the, if they take a look at the encyclicals of the popes,
Yes.
take a look at Humanae Vitae and what it says.
So important.
I mean, Pope Paul VI predicted all this.
That's right.
And he was even chastised by his own cardinals and
That's right.
bishops saying, no, this is not the way to go.
Some of them, yeah. Yeah.
And he predicted the culture of death, and that was in 1964. We're
That was
talking.
1968, and that
68 was
yeah.
yeah, right, 68.
And that was one prophetic encyclical.
Yeah.
I would even go so far as to say it's one of the most important encyclicals ever written in the history of the world.
Yeah.
I put it after the Bible and the Catechism, but it's right up there because
Yeah.
it relates to what we're talking about, the difference,
Exactly.
distinction between life and death,
Yeah.
and the culture of life versus a culture of death. So we get to prayer, education. The third one is outreach.
Outreach. Okay. Outreach has to do with our support of all the pregnancy centers here in New Hampshire.
Why don't you tell folks what a pregnancy center is?
Pregnancy center? There's different kinds of pregnancy centers. A lot of them go along the lines of CareNet. There's also Birthright.
Yep.
But what they basically do is support women in their decision-making process. I mean, sometimes they still go through the abortion, but they make them aware of what's available to them. Sometimes for most of these women, they're like a scared rat in the corner. And you almost don't blame them sometimes because
No,
they
get
have
no
somebody
support.
forcing them,
Yeah.
a boyfriend's beating them up saying, you got to get the abortion. At least the pregnancy says, look, here is another avenue you can take. If you don't need to be a parent. Not everybody's meant to be a parent. So you can give up the child.
For adoption.
You can give up the child for adoption, right.
And some places even have housing for women who might be kicked out of their house because
There's a
they're
few,
pregnant.
yeah.
And so these pregnancy centers, like we were talking about earlier with education, they basically speak the truth about what's going on.
And with the ultrasounds, they
And-
could see their baby.
and give assistance.
There is,
through
and,
their-
and that's what we do. That's part of what
Yeah.
we did doing the past few years when we had they call it the Birthright Dinner back in February where Bishop Labashi spoke. We had all these councils bringing in all these non-perishable items
Very good.
for the women.
Yeah.
And we had them fan out throughout the whole state as far as Littleton, over to the Seacoast, over the Keene.
I actually founded a crisis pregnancy center in Massachusetts called Heartbeat.
I've
Have you
seen
heard?
that, yes.
Yeah. And I know that the women there who work tirelessly, and
They
they
do.
don't get a penny for it, by the way, the ones that are at Heartbeat, they assist the women with unexpected pregnancies through their pregnancy
Right.
with financial gifts from the community. They drive them to doctor's appointments. They help them after the baby is born with diapers and
that's-
food,
yeah,
baby
yeah.
food, and all kinds of stuff that the community voluntarily offers to the place. So these pregnancy centers are a gift from God in as much as all of that support and assistance that a pregnant girl doesn't have, these pregnancy centers can offer.
Exactly. And it shows them a different path. And a lot of times, they even said to me, some of the directors will say, it is really a matter of economics. Okay, I don't know if I really want to abort this child. I really want a child. But what can you do for me? Well, this is what we can do for you.
Yeah.
We can give you baby clothes. We can help you. We can give you counseling. We can give you, referrals for services with the state for Medicaid or for food stamps and things like that.
Yeah. Help assist them
Yeah.
through the entire process.
Yeah.
So there would be, there is no need for fear.
The only shame, and it's a little bit of a tangent, but I think about this all the time.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of women are in a corner, and a lot of women are trapped when it comes to making a decision about having a child. Unfortunately, there's another side to the story. There are women with enough money, and that goes back to the pill and the culture of death,
Yeah.
that they use abortion almost as a substitute for any type of
Or
contraception.
birth control, right.
Birth control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, there are a lot of women that have had multiple abortions, and
Yeah.
that doesn't get out there.
Well, speaking of that, I'm glad you mentioned that because this might be I don't think this is a tangent at all. There are many chemical pills and hormonal pills that women take today that they think are contraceptives, but they're actually abortifacients.
Right.
They actually abort tiny babies, and they
That's
don't
right.
even know it.
That's right.
One of them is the common birth control pill. It has this backup mechanism, doesn't it? Are you familiar with that? The common birth control pill is meant to keep sperm from reaching egg.
Right.
And oftentimes it does that, but sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, what happens is the chemical compound in it makes the woman's uterine lining.
Yeah, it can't attach itself to the uterus. Yes, that I know.
The tiny human
It travels,
being,
but can't go anywhere.
yeah, it goes down
yeah.
the fallopian tube
Right.
and is unable to attach
Right,
itself
exactly,
to the womb
yeah.
because of the hormonal composition of the pill that the mother is taking, and flushes out of the mother's system without them even knowing it. So many women are aborting their children unwittingly today.
Right. Plus, you mentioned the chemicals that they're using. You know, my wife was a nurse for many years back in New York City.
This is important.
And they didn't even know what they do. The body is not supposed to regulate. Do this.
Yeah.
There's a natural rhythm. Even if you're not a religious person,
Yeah,
there's
no-
what's called
no question.
natural law.
Okay, this is what I find fascinating because it's such an irony. Most people who believe in the entire movements of global warming, who believe that are big ecology people, and I think I happen to be an ecology person. I care about the environment and the world.
Stewardship.
Yeah. But most people who are very deeply into the environment, are the ones that promote and condone the ruination of the ecology of women's bodies. And I find that interesting, that they care about the earth and its, and its destroying the earth through chemicals and so forth, but they don't care about what women are putting in their bodies in terms of the chemicals.
It's an irony. Yeah.
And they're really, we could do a whole show on what the pill actually does to women, their brains and their makeup, but
Yeah.
it's not good at all, to put it very, very succinctly. It is, in a sense, abusive to women to take contraception pills.
Well, I mean, it can lead to certain cancers.
Yeah, it's a,
I mean,
it's a class 1 carcinogen.
Yeah.
All right. The fourth thing, actually, after prayer, education, and outreach that you have down here is legislative action.
Yeah. Okay.
The political dimension.
Well, we take a look at different bills that are coming up, whether it's at the State House
Yeah.
or whether it's at a national level. I tell people that they should, and as being a member of the Knights of Columbus, we cannot endorse any particular candidate.
Okay.
But we tell people that they need to as best as possible, vote pro-life. I mean, even Father Frank Pavone says sometimes it's the lesser of two evils. Which candidate is going to hurt less than the other candidate?
And you really have to ask that question this time around, don't we?
Exactly. Which candidate is going to hurt less? So, and I'll get back to that in a second.
Right.
And then, like I said, a lot on the national level. Like I said, I get a lot of emails. I like the Susan B. Anthony list. They have links where you can go in and vote and contact your senators. I just sent stuff out on the with the what was it? The conscience with the act that the House passed, but the Senate hasn't passed yet.
Okay. Religious conscience?
Yeah, forcing different organizations to supply these services and things
Yep.
like that.
Yep.
And then in the past, in this state, I remember we had the parental notification on that. Although the problem is that the legislator swings back and forth so much,
Yeah.
it's hard to get anything passed. I mean, last year, at the beginning of the year, and my wife's got a lot of chutzpah. For a little Italian from Brooklyn, she got a lot of chutzpah. She actually called, not this last time, but Chris Sununu, and spoke to him. And she said to him, don't you understand? You don't need Planned Parenthood. There's this, there's that, there's this. I sent them copies of every single pregnancy center website through his email. And at that time, he voted to defund. Now I guess he has got different,
really
irons in the fire.
It's mind-blowing.
And she called again and left message to him. And I said, where is he going with this? Doesn't he understand that, oh yeah, most of their money doesn't go for abortion? I'll tell you what, go to Planned Parenthood today and say, okay, not that I agree with this, give out contraception, give out this, give out that, give out that. Don't do any abortions.
Right. Look.
They would be flabbergasted. They would never do that.
They don't do ultrasounds. They don't do
Right.
breast exams, if I'm not mistaken. They don't do a lot of things that other places do. And of course, one of the reasons it doesn't do ultrasounds is that
It's going to show life.
Yeah, it wants to keep the truth away from the women that go in there because they do make a lot of money on killing babies. They might have a certain percentage of baby killing that occurs, a smaller percentage than other services they do, but the money made
right.
on that is
It's tremendous.
Yeah, it's tremendous.
And people don't realize that.
Yeah.
And people don't realize, I mean, these videos that came out last year, which is videos of discussions about baby parts. They want real videos of what goes on. And again, I go back, and he's going to be here in the state in October, New Hampshire Right to Life, for their annual banquet. Is Father Pavone is the guest speaker. And his statement, America won't stop abortion until America sees abortion. And it's kind of gory, but he may be accurate. Because I don't think people think, oh, it's just this, it's just that, it's just this, it's just that.
It does seem reasonable, though, if many women choose life for their child after they see an ultrasound, then many pro-choice people will turn pro-life if they see what's really going on in an abortion. It sort of follows. Yeah, because the truth is being suppressed, and whenever it isn't, a lot of people do respond.
And that's our jobs. My job, your job as a Catholic and as a Knight of Columbus is to speak the truth. With mercy, but we need to speak the truth. We can't obfuscate. We can't say, no. We got to be like a rock. We got to be like a stone. Because 50 years, it's taken 50 years for the culture of death to climax where it is now.
Yeah.
And we have to work at changing the culture. And that's going to take the prayer. It's going to take everything.
All four of these facets.
Yeah.
Speaking of legislative action, I understand that there is some legislation regarding Baby Safe Haven. You want to explain what that is?
Okay. Well, Baby Safe Haven is on the books. It was passed, was it 2003? But it was a good 11, 12 years ago. Basically, what it allows in this state, I think of up to 7 days old, if a child is born up to 7 days old, a woman could give up the child without any recriminations to what they call certain safe haven spots, be that a church, a fire department, a rescue department, a police department, and there may be a few others. But it doesn't happen that often, obviously, but it is the fact that the Knights are beginning to promote this. What we want to give these women another opportunity to save their child. And what our State Deputy, Wayne Griffin, and I'll give him credit, it was his brainchild, and we discussed it last year, and he says, Ron, let's get on this, let's do more. And, Brother Dave Ive and his daughter are making videos about it. But the Knights are paying for whatever the signs are, for the safe haven signs. And that's the easy part. The difficult part is for each council to go to its local, municipalities or go to their fire departments or wherever and to convince them to put up the signs.
Yeah.
It's not like we're asking them to do more. If the sign is up there and a woman decides to leave their baby, then they know what they must do, because obviously the child's going to end up with DCYF care and go through the state system.
Is that what happens?
Usually, unless
and
they find
they're-
an adoption, but
But are they eventually adopted out, these
sometimes some are,
Okay.
and some are not. But the
Okay.
point is that the child is given an opportunity.
Hmm.
So that's what, and we're trying to expand it again this year. So that's part of the work I guess I'll be doing this year, trying to promote with the councils for them to contact their local police and fire to get them to put up the signs. It was at the dinner last year, and I think it was, obviously there was a YouTube of it a few years ago, but the bishop, and it happened back in Queens, back in New York, and he's a fellow New Yorker like me, but he talked about the woman it was near Christmas time, and had the baby and was passing the church and went into the church, I guess it was before Christmas, and the creche was not full,
Wow.
and she put the baby
Wow.
into the creche and left the baby there. And everybody was like, oh my God, yeah. So she knew that
Wow.
the baby's going to be, so that was in the church. So that was his emphasis to say, look, get out there, support this program.
I think it's a great idea. You know,
Yeah.
later in life, when I was an adult, I personally found out that my grandmother was the result of a rape. You're Italian, so am I. I have an Italian descent. When she was conceived and born in Italy, back at the turn of the century, apparently, I don't know if it was from, well, it probably was from rape, because that's very often it was
Well, the poverty.
such a shameful thing.
poverty.
Or poverty, yeah.
Yeah, the poverty.
That what apparently my great-grandmother, who of course I've never met, did was gave birth to my grandmother, and gave her as a baby to, I think it was a convent. Dropped her off at the convent,
Yeah,
and this was a tradition, supposedly, that they had back then. The nuns took the baby in, no questions asked,
Yep.
and adopted her out. And just to take a perspective of this for a minute, to see how important this is. My grandmother was adopted out by those nuns, and her adopted family moved to America. She met my grandfather, who also moved to America. They got married, and they had my mother and my uncle, and eventually they got married to my father and my uncle,
Oh, yeah.
my aunts.
Yeah.
My uncle had 3 children, my mother had 5 children. Now they have 12, something like 11 grandchildren. Here's the bottom line. If my grandmother was aborted,
Right.
rather than
What
dropped
happened?
off at that
Yeah.
convent,
Right, exactly.
my mother wouldn't exist, my uncle wouldn't exist, my brothers and sisters, my cousins, none of them would exist, and you would be doing something else today, or talking to somebody else in this chair, because I never would have existed.
Yeah, yeah.
One abortion, or one potential
We
abortion,
don't know
wipes
what
out an
the
entire
results are
life
going to be.
and generations.
It's missed opportunities.
Yeah.
It's missed development of someone's talents.
Yeah.
They say, where are all the good teachers? Where are all the good doctors? Where are all the good missionaries? Well, there's 53 million of them gone
Yeah.
because of abortion. Our society is
It's impossible
become
to imagine
worse.
what the world would have been like today if abortion never became legal, if those 60 million were here. And right now they're, under 35 years old in 1973? No, everybody under 33, if I'm not mistaken.
That's 40 years ago, right? 43 years since Roe v. Wade.
73 was 43 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow, it's been that long.
yeah.
For people under, 1/3 of all people under 43 years old today who are walking around are missing
That's right.
because of
That's right.
abortion.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
to touch on one thing, and I just to get back to it, because we mentioned about legislative
Yes, legislative
action, right? When we talk about voting, I gave a talk once at the one of the conventions for the Knights about 7, 8 years ago, and I got to say, I'll admit it got mixed reviews because I made them uncomfortable. You
Good
know,
for you.
You know, it was like afflicting the comforted, instead of comforting the afflicted.
What's
And it was-
the old saying that Christ came to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable?
Yeah, yeah. That's
Good
what
for
I
you.
did.
Good.
And I didn't ask him to answer me the question because it's not for me to say. But I said, now look at what these candidates have to offer. Now, look deep down into yourself what your Catholic faith means to you and what's important to you in your faith. If you're truly living as Christ wanted us to live, which is love, and love translates in, for me, to the culture of life.
Yes. it
Can
does.
you, and they hated this, but I could see some people going,
Yeah.
can you commit a sin in the voting booth? And they went, ah. I said, don't answer it. I don't want you to answer it.
I'd like to answer it.
Well, I know, but I was, talking
Yeah.
to a group of 100 people.
Right.
I said, don't answer it right now. You need to think about this. You can't tell me, this is the answer I always get. It's not the only issue. It's not the only issue. Well, it's one of the most important issues.
Yeah.
If if you're going to vote for somebody because they believe in this economic strategy, or they believe in this foreign policy, but they believe abortion at any time, then as your conscience dictates, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, then you haven't fully formed your conscience
Right.
as a Roman Catholic. And I let it go because it was like a guy, Ron,
Well, good
how
for
can you
you.
say that, Ron?
Whenever you scratch people's consciences, that's always a good thing. You're planting
Yeah.
seeds. But it's really difficult to convince people to rise above their selfish interests to vote. To vote for what is the common good for the country.
There you go.
It's very,
There you go.
very difficult.
Yeah,
And how can you possibly say, and I am going to have a couple of people probably dislike me for what I'm about to say right now, but if we were living in Nazi Germany right now, and let's say they had a democracy, and their election was in November, and Hitler was running on a very attractive platform to a lot of people. The only thing they didn't like is that he's killing these Jews every day, millions at a time in death camps. But
Right.
other than that, he might have a good health care proposal. He might be good for my understanding of education, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's this other guy who I might not agree with everything, but at least he's against the killing of the Jews, that ongoing Holocaust that's happening. How many people do you think would vote for their own selfish interests and vote for Hitler? I think that's exactly what's going on right now.
We have this is the 21st century Holocaust.
4,200 preborn children a day, every single day, are being killed before birth in this country.
Yeah.
How can you possibly go in there and vote anything else? That's a good. That's a question. I'm just
I
throwing
know.
the question
I
out.
agree with you. I agree with you. But that's because it's funny, because when I first started this job, and it was a learning process. There's a lot of things I fumbled around. Obviously, I was energetic, but you still fumble sometimes. And they asked me, and I was listening. I did a lot of listening. And they says, "What do you think your biggest problem with building a culture of life is, or defeating whatever?"
Yeah.
And my answer was Catholics. And he
Yes.
goes, "What do you mean?" I says, "Come here. I'll tell you what I mean. You got Catholics voting that they shouldn't vote. You got Catholics not living their faith. You've got Catholics, parents who don't go to church. My wife experienced this, it's just as an aside, when she was teaching CCD years ago. Never see the parents at church, never see anybody.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they want their child confirmed. And my wife, Marianne, would
Right.
say, "But they didn't come to the classes."
Right, right.
And the priest would say, well,
Yeah.
Marianne, can you do a
Let's
quick
wipe it
course,
aside. Right, right, right.
of confirmation to get them ready? Well, these
know-
kids don't know anything about the Catholic faith. They're just getting confirmed in
Yeah.
name only.
We are continuing the weakening of the church by doing that. What I find interesting is it sort of matches last week's reading, gospel reading, I believe, that at the end of it, Christ said, for those who have been given much, much will be expected of them.
Right.
Catholics have been given much. To squander that and to become simply a person of the world who votes on selfish interests rather than caring about what's going on in terms of our culture of death, a serious problem. And I fully agree with what you're saying there.
Yeah. I mean, it's nobody's, I tell them, the Brother Knights, I'm always using the term evangelize. Get out there. Speak the truth.
Yeah.
Even in a work situation, don't back down. I mean, you may not want to be, so vociferous, but you gotta tell them, no, that's not right.
Prudently,
Prudently,
right.
with mercy.
With
In this
mercy.
year of mercy, with mercy.
But
yeah.
mercy does not say you shouldn't speak the truth.
That's right. That's right.
Mother Angelica once said, if Catholics in this world, if Catholics were Catholics, the entire world would be
Oh
transformed.
yeah, yeah.
The entire world would be transformed.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That-
We
that's
we,
where it starts.
We have our reruns on TV at night. In fact, I think she's on tonight, Tuesday night. She's on,
Yes.
but she has words of wisdom that, and it's funny because on my job, I really gotta like keep a low profile, because everybody's so secular. I mean, some
Yeah.
people go to church, but I had one guy. Now, Ron, didn't the Pope? Didn't they do away with purgatory? And I said, he's like, I said, when were you last to church? Well, Christmas time, and
Right, right.
So the secularism is so prevalent today, and it's difficult to me, and especially, unfortunately, as a quote unquote government employee, I gotta keep my mouth shut because
Yeah.
I can't. I just
too bad.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
funny. It's funny that in our world today, Catholics get a secular education. They graduate high school. Many of them get a 4-year degree. They get a bachelor's. They graduate that.
yeah.
Many of them get master's degrees. Some even get doctoral degrees. All of this secular knowledge and education that they spend years and years and years, and yet most of those same people have a 7th or 8th grade education, and I put it in quotes, of their Catholic faith.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What kind of sense does that make?
It's
No wonder that they're going to be fooled by the media and the anti-Christian culture out
I
there.
mean, it took me a long time to get back to the sacrament of reconciliation. I think a lot of men go through that, and I think that's just a natural process. But I tell people, you don't understand what, you're going to sin. You're a sinner.
Yeah.
You're a human being.
Yes.
But the relief or the ability to say, God, I'm going to try harder.
And you can start again anew.
Right. But
Yeah.
Catholics don't use that. They line up for communion.
Yeah,
Where are they
which is a
during-
sacrilege if they're in mortal sin. But that's
Who
another.
knows?
That's
Who
another.
knows?
That's
Okay,
another.
yeah, we
right.
can do another hour
That's
on
another
that.
hour on
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But I think what you're saying is so
Telling
important.
John Kerry not to go to confession, go to communion, maybe.
For the Catholic, and this is what I tell the kids. I run also a religious education program. So very often I say that while baptism is like a spiritual bath, confession is like a spiritual shower. And how long would you go without taking a shower?
That's right.
It's really a good analogy because, like you say, you come out of there feeling fully refreshed when you come out of the
And
sacrament.
I
of
always was
confession.
afraid that the priest would, Miriam would say to me, Ron, they've heard it all. You're not giving them anything new. And they go, Ron, okay. No, it's like, big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. But you have to know what sin is in order to repent of it and confess it. And that's where bad catechesis comes in to play.
And that's unfortunate. Well, we can another hour on that. That's what happened in the 80s. Bad
yes,
catechesis.
70s, 80s, 90s, all the way up until the present time. Hopefully it's turning around right now. If anybody's interested in adult education, there's plenty of resources for that too. But I also teach on Sunday mornings at St. Patrick's starting in September, adult catechesis.
Did you took over Sister Elizabeth's role?
She left, and
You
yeah,
took
so
over
I'm-
Sister Elizabeth?
No, pretty much, yeah. I'm doing my own thing.
Because my wife and daughter go there a lot.
Is that right?
Yeah, because my mother-in-law, when she was alive,
very
she
good.
used to go to St. Pat's. They're Roman Catholics. They like to move around.
Roman Catholics,
Yeah,
right?
Roman
exactly.
Catholics.
All right, how about upcoming events? Why don't we talk about what's going on with the Knights of Columbus
Okay.
regarding Right to Life?
Okay, well, we'll start right out. I'll just go a timeline here.
Okay.
It's something that we get involved with. Sometimes Knights run it, but we don't always run it. But we have the 40 Days for Life. We have the first 40 Days for Life coming up. It starts towards the end of September and goes up to Election Day.
Okay.
The next 40 Days for Life is during Lent.
And that relates to prayerful presence in front of abortion clinics.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, we try to get people to sign up. I tell people it's easy. There's a website. Just go in, put your time in there. You can use it on your iPhone or whatever. Go up and pray. And I try to do it as much as possible. I try,
right.
but it's a
Google.
prayerful. It's to get for us to be there to tell them, whoever is inside, that, we're not going away. We're here.
Yes.
We're here
Yeah.
to pray for you, and we're here to stand witness.
We can't go away
No, right.
when there's.
So that's part of that. I'm just trying to think.
Well, how about the benefit that Father Pavone is going to be at?
Oh, that's okay. That's
Yeah.
run by New Hampshire Right to Life.
Okay.
They run that. I think Wayne's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Okay. But we try to get as many people to go to that event, their annual fundraiser. This is a big name. I'm telling people, this is
Father Frank Pavone.
Pavone. Yeah, this is
great guy.
There are other pregnancy centers that have their dinners, whether it's Birthright or CareNet or actually basically different CareNets. We try to promote that. We try to get the councils. Usually October is like a Respect Life month too, and also dedicated to the Blessed Mother. We try to get them to have different things locally, whether it's a pro-life rosary or a mass or something like that. Come in February, we have what they call the Birthright Dinner. That's where we honor all the women who work for the pregnancy centers, and we make the collections for the different pregnancy centers to go out throughout the state, the different non-perishable items. And then this year on April 9th, that must be Palm Sunday, the pro-life seminar is going to be up at St. Joseph's Cathedral in Manchester. And this year, Ovid LaMontagne is going to be the guest speaker.
Very good.
In the past, we've had some different priests come up, and one of the more powerful witnesses we have was, and I think you've heard it, was Rebecca Kiesling came.
Yes.
Rebecca, whose mother tried to have her aborted
She is
twice.
Great. She is great.
She gave a powerful witness at that.
Yeah.
And so
she is a living example of what is aborted. And when somebody is raped, she's the result of a rape.
She's got a lot of children, and she does a lot of good work in a parish there out in Michigan.
We've got about a minute left. Do you
Okay.
want to just sort of summarize for the people what we can do as individuals to, at least our part, in supporting the culture of life?
I think, as I said before, the first thing that we can do is pray. Try to be as close to God as possible. I always left the nights with this little mantra. And I said, you remember if you ran track, they would say, get on your mark. It said, go.
Yeah.
And I changed my mark to M-A-R-C. I said, you need Mass, you need adoration, you need rosary, and you need confession. And if you become close to God, then you're going to be open to the education, to the outreach.
He will inspire you.
To the political legislation of activities that we need to do to build the culture of life. So you've got to pray to God that you get the Holy Spirit to uplift you and to make you understand that if we don't go away from what's going on now, then our country is in serious trouble.
And if we don't do our part in trying to combat it, then perhaps spiritually we are in serious trouble.
Exactly.
Very good. Thank you for coming.
All right.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Ron?
Very good.
Ron
Excellent.
D'Estasio.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Have a good night, everybody.
So